Welcome to the Tevora Talks InfoSec podcast and daily news, brought to you by Tevora. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Tevora Talks. Yo, let's go. InfoSec Weekly News. I'm your host, Cash, and as always, joined by my co-host and partner in cybercrime, Matt Mosley. What's up, Matt?
Not much. Just another day, another dollar. Another day, another dollar. Sorry.
Make you holla. But so we're gonna be talking about some cool stuff today. Not super techie, I guess, but it's still an awesome subject. Matt,
a little techie, a little nerdy. It's okay.
It's nerdy. It's definitely nerdy because I mean we all are nerds deep down. If
Yeah.
you're listening to this, you are a little bit of a nerd, so accept that. But what are we talking about? This was your idea for today. This is something that you seem to love, so lay it on us, man.
Yeah, definitely. So I don't know when I started getting into security. I was pretty young. I know, like for me, just computers in general. Like I loved computers. At the time, like I was living in Germany. My dad was stationed. He was in the army, and we were stationed in Germany. And he would bring home a laptop. And from that moment on, like, I think I was like 5 or 6 years old and I just fell in love with computers. So that was probably around 80, 87, 88, 89, somewhere around there.
Did you guys have internet then on the laptop or not yet? Huh?
No internet. But we did have, so he would bring that home and we'd play around with it and stuff. And I would just tinker. And I actually learned, did we even have DOS back then? I don't think we even had DOS back then. But yeah, we had the floppy disks, the big 5 1/4 floppies, and then we ended up getting our own like personal computer with 4 colors.
There you go. Moving on up.
But that slowly like evolved into just always having an interest in computers, and then I remember like growing up later on, around like 91-ish, 92. It's only a few years later, but we moved back to the States. And I was at a library and I came across a book called Cyberpunk. And the only reason I came across it was just because I liked the cover. So, the whole thing, like, don't judge a book by its cover. But it had a pretty cool cover and it had a cool name, Cyberpunk, right? And it was called Cyberpunk Outlaws and Hackers on the Computer Frontier. And I'm looking at this book right now. Let me just see.
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah. So yeah, this was
it's like a fist crushing a keyboard. How
exactly
poetic.
Yeah, it's hardcore, man. So this talked all about like phone phreaking in LA and followed a couple different people, and then that was it, man. It just like from then on, I just had this weird gravitation towards that. And then the movie Hackers came out in like 95. And that was it, man. Hackers and sneakers and war games and that's what I wanted to do.
Nice.
So that's why I majored in graphic design.
You didn't get the memo, man. You weren't looking at the signs.
Truth be told, I didn't know you could make money in computer security. In fact, I didn't even know there was a computer security field. So, but I always was gravitating around it and everything. And then finally got kind of obviously where I am today. But with that said, I thought it would be fun to do a bunch of stories and like just tidbits about history in general for computer security, and kind of like not only where I started, but where I think a lot of us all started, and the people that inspired us and the heroes of computer security, or just in general of the computer revolution. And so the first story that I wanted to talk about, or at least the first individual, John Draper, better known as Captain Crunch. So hopefully that rings a few bells with a few of you, right?
Is he the guy? He's the guy that did the telephone scam to win a car or something? Oh no.
No. We'll talk about him though. Kevin Poulsen.
Oh, Kevin Poulsen. Okay,
yeah. So that's coming up too, and that's a cool story as well.
Oh, I know Captain Crunch. Okay, but you tell it. Go.
Yeah. So Captain Crunch. Just a little bit of background on him. He came out of the Air Force. He was like he studied electrical engineering. Kind of had a fascination with phones and payphones and all that stuff, just how the systems would work. Once he got out of the Air Force, he lived in the Silicon Valley area, which probably one of the better parts to be in the 70s, especially for, what was about to happen there. But while he was there, he figured out that actually him and another individual kind of around the same time, Joy Bubbles is what he went by. He was a blind phone phreaker. And so I guess I should kind of talk about that term a little bit. Phreaking is what it's called when you're hacking on a phone system. And so phone phreaks were kind of the forefathers, I guess, or the founding fathers of hacking.
Okay.
And so in this world, John Draper, made a name for himself because he discovered that you could actually generate a 2600 Hertz tone, which sounds like this.
Okay.
Sorry that's ear piercing, but that tone would talk to the phone systems, and it would give it a signal that would allow for a phone phreak to do different things, right? So they would hit that tone, and then they would hit other tones and cause the system to dial or perform actions on their behalf.
That's crazy.
And the phone system didn't know any better. They just thought it was their system making these requests, right? So really interesting. Like, how do you even figure this out? How do you know to do this stuff, right? Like,
yeah, what is the start point? You're like, hey, I'm just gonna beep at the phone and see what happens.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess in the 70s, like nobody really knew or had anything to do. Just kidding. I mean, they had plenty of stuff to do, but
smoke weed every day.
I'm sure they did a lot of that in the 70s. That's maybe where it started from. For sure. Maybe John was.
But yeah, maybe that inspired him. I don't know. We all know, a friend of a friend has told me that creativity is sparked by weed. So maybe, I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah, I have a friend who once said that.
I mean, I'm reading on him. It says he did live a nomadic lifestyle. So
yeah, depending on what you read, he definitely lived it up in the 70s. In fact, I think the Wikipedia article that I was researching says that, and actually I'll just read it right here because I have it up. During this period, he also worked as an engineer and disc jockey for K-Cup in Cupertino, California, and adopted the counterculture styles of the time by wearing long hair and smoking.
Smoke weed every day.
Yeah, he
and
for
smoking
sure.
Marijuana. So.
Yeah, there you go. He did. That was the inspiration.
Yeah,
100%.
So, so his claim to fame was that he discovered that you could pull a Captain Crunch toy whistle out of the cereal, and if you covered up one of the holes, you could generate that 2600 hertz frequency. And
that's crazy.
So you'd blow that into the phone, and then you would generate the tone that was needed for the phone to interact, right? And so, like, I know that there's probably a lot of millennials on here that maybe didn't. So I'm kind of in that generation where I'm between the digital and analog, so I got to see both worlds. I think you are too.
Yep.
So there's a lot of people that probably don't know that one time we used to live in dial-up. And you had to have a modem that talked to the
what was
talked
the
over the phone
that?
lines, and internet was not as fast as it is today.
Do you remember that annoying sound?
Yes.
It was like annoying, but at the same time it was like a hell yeah.
Nothing annoying about it, dude. Like, it was the fiber of my being at the time.
I'm connecting. Yeah, that's it. Oh, there you go. That was the real sound right there. Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, that last tone there was, I don't have an ear for these things, but I would say that's probably pretty close to 2600. But yeah, it would cause that connection so that the computer could talk to the other computer on the other end, and then you'd establish your internet connection. So these guys were like human modems, right? They would, for lack of a better term, they would go through and, in fact, Joy Bubbles, who was in the East Coast at the time, he was a blind phone phreaker, and he could actually whistle those tones.
What?
Which is just incredible that he had perfect pitch like that, that he could actually cause the phone systems to do crazy things just with his voice. And In fact, there's a character in Sneakers that I believe was based on him because his name is Whistler and he's a blind hacker who's very good at phone freaking in the movie. So if you ever get a chance, watch Sneakers. Um, highly recommend that movie. It's probably one of the best computer security movies out there.
How is
Not
it?
100% accurate as all
When did that
things
come out?
are.
Is it like
but
90s ish?
yeah. Yeah. It's got Robert Redford and Sidney Poitier, Dan Aykroyd, River Phoenix before he passed away. And I can't remember the name of the guy who plays Whistler, but he was awesome. So anyway, definitely check that out. But
1992.
yeah. So it's pretty interesting. All this was happening in the 70s. Some fun stories that happened was that John Draper, aka Captain Crunch, started hanging out with Steve Wozniak.
The Woz.
And for those that don't know Steve Wozniak, which if you don't know Steve Wozniak, I don't have a
Look him
sound
up.
for it, but GTFO. Get the F out.
Yeah, have you been under a rock?
Yeah. So Steve Wozniak was Steve Jobs' counterpart at Apple, and he's the I would say godfather of personal computers, right? So this guy created the personal computer.
Yeah, he's like the real wizard.
Yeah,
behind
for
everything,
sure.
for sure.
The Woz.
Yeah, the Woz.
So him and Captain Crunch would hang out, and one night they had a funny story where I don't know what time it was on the west coast of United States, but they called the Pope in the Vatican at 4 a.m.
Oh god.
They I don't even know who they pretended to be, but I know that they're like, yeah, we're here. We just want to talk to the Pope. And whoever was on the other line was like, yeah, sorry, he's sleeping right now. It's 4 a.m. They hung up the phone. But yeah, so Woz, and I don't know if I can back this up with any actual evidence, but I believe him and John Draper used to build the blue boxes together, and then we're selling them around the Silicon Valley and stuff. And I mean, John Draper went on to do all kinds of crazy things, but he was always like getting involved with the law. Like, I don't know that he ever like learned his lesson ever. Like, he got arrested multiple times, and at one point he was like thrown in jail in Lompoc prison.
For what?
I can't remember what the charge was, but I might have been toll fraud or something to do with the phones. But he tells a story about how when he was in there, he took a radio and he modified it so that he could listen in on the guards' radios. And then also modified it to where he could jam their radios.
Oh god.
Which has got to be terrible. So, and I don't know that anybody ever found out that he did that, but yeah, super smart guy. Unfortunately, like a lot of hackers, like used his powers for good and not for or used his powers for bad, for evil and not for good. So but definitely
evil in a funny
pretty
way,
badass.
though.
What?
I said evil in a funny way, maybe. So far, that's what it sounds like.
Oh yeah, I mean, he was totally just like a next level up from the rest of the crew, from all the people around him, as far as like just kind of being an evil genius and getting away with shit. It was he might be considered kind of like the first like thug life in our world, at least.
Yeah, for sure. Trolling all the freaking head honchos everywhere.
Yeah, but I mean, so the reason I really wanted to talk about John Draper is because maybe he wasn't the first, but he's definitely most prolific in terms of phone freaking, and he kind of inspired a lot of people. I mean, like Wozniak says that he was one of his inspirations, and Wozniak's one of my inspirations. So it's kind of cool to kind of follow that family tree, if you will, for lack of a better term, just to do some research and find out about these different individuals. And then later on, there was it still is a pretty famous hacker magazine called the 2600 Hacker Quarterly. Uh-huh. And obviously the name comes from the 2600 Hertz frequency that gets generated. Before you could find all of the stuff on the internet, 2600 was the magazine that I had to go to once a quarter and get information on what was going on and just different ways to hack different systems. And it's not, I hate to say it. I feel like I'm committing blasphemy, but not so much as important as it used to be, just because we have information at our fingertips, right? Through the internet. So coming out in a quarter, there's not a whole lot there that gets covered that hasn't already been covered online, but definitely worth checking out. There's still sites, I think, online. You can even probably torrent it. I'm not advocating for torrenting, but you can definitely find older copies and just check out the history. Definitely fascinating stuff. So, but I think there's even one story, and this was kind of what set up his infamous profile for John Draper, was that in Esquire magazine, like around 1971, they did an article about the blue box, and I guess something about like, and I'm totally probably getting this all wrong, but I know there was something about like the mafia, some guy with the mafia was using it wrong. And that's how the phone companies started kind of catching on to what was happening. And I think that's kind of what they led them to John Draper, or AKA Captain Crunch's trail. So
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's pretty interesting. I think he said in one interview that, that was when kind of the fit hit the shan, and he started freaking out about kind of his freedom because that article had come out, and then he'd his association with it. So, but pretty interesting nonetheless. And then he kind of so phone freaking became a thing, became like a counterculture, which led to wanting to learn more about phone systems, and that kind of was a good jumping off point for individuals like Kevin Mitnick, which we can talk about more. But if you don't know who Kevin Mitnick is, definitely look him up.
Who's it?
You don't know who Kevin Mitnick is? So Kevin Mitnick was a hacker and probably most known for being a social engineer. He's still's around, still has his own company, and he would basically con his way into phone offices or phone company offices, and he would, I'm here to fix whatever. I'm here to fix the heater. And he would go in the back and find different manuals and stuff like that on how the phone systems worked. And I think his biggest claim to fame was that he found an ability to, I think he was like eavesdropping on cell phones, like in their early days of cell phones. Like he could use a radio scanner and he could listen to, I want to say it was cell phones. It could have been just regular telephones, but for a while he was on the run from the FBI. And I think they really kind of he was one of the first hackers that was really arrested and kind of made an example of. I think he was held in prison for 3 years without a trial. So there was like a campaign, Free Kevin, that was going around like in the 90s and stuff like that. And there's some, at least one movie that I know of about him called Takedown, whether the accuracy of that movie is good or not, but you can tell I get all my history from movies. So, but
that's the best place.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned movies because it's the easiest thing for people to kind of like watch and get entertained. And whether the information's not 100% accurate, you're going to get the majority of the story. So I always try to like, tell people to do that rather than, if I recommend Cyberpunk, a book from the 90s, most people aren't going to go out and read that book. But when you can watch a movie like Pirates of Silicon Valley, or Takedown, or Hackers, or Sneakers, or War Games, or I don't even know what else. But if you can watch a movie and get entertained and also learn something, then that's awesome, right?
Dude, this Kevin guy is pretty. He's the real deal, man. It says he got charged of 14 counts of wire fraud, possession of unauthorized access devices, 8 counts there, interception of wire or electric communications, unauthorized access to federal computer, and causing damage to a computer. He says he served 5 years in prison. 4.5 years
feels good
trial.
to be a gangster.
Yeah. I guess he's the real gangster, man. And he made it out.
Yeah, he did make it out, and now he's like he's the face of what's that one he's not the face, but what's that one credit card fraud company that monitors your like a Lifeline or something? I can't remember. The CEO
He's
went
the
on he went on like all those commercials and he posted his social security number up, and then he got his identity stolen like 60 billion times. I forget the name, but anyway, they interviewed him in like a paid TV commercial. But yeah,
That's
Kevin
interesting.
Mitnick's still around. In fact, I ran into him, not personally, but I ran into him on a project once. So he was hired secretly by the executive leadership of a company, and they were trying to find a mole. And so what he had done was he created this payload, for lack of a better term, but it was basically clam AV and bundled up with another script that would search the computers for certain items. And what they were trying to do is find those certain items, like who in the company had those items on their computers. And then that was going to give them their list of people that were, suspects.
Suspects, yeah. Okay.
Well, I was contacted by the IT team because they knew my background and it was a friend of mine. And he was like, "Hey, can you check this out? Like, this is weird. Our company's making us install this antivirus that I've never heard of. And it just seems really weird." So I got it and I pulled it apart and I found, I wouldn't say I reverse engineered it, but I pulled it apart to see like what it was doing, and found out what it was doing and told him, what it was doing, and kind of spoiled apparently Kevin Mitnick's plan.
Oh, no way.
And it was like a couple of months later, my buddy came back to me and told me like what the whole deal was, and that it was Kevin Mitnick that was behind it. And I was like, "Oh, that's pretty badass."
That is
So,
pretty cool, man.
yeah. But yeah, he's the king of social engineering, which we should have definitely have like Truman Kane from our team talk about that. That would be a pretty good guest to go over since he heads up like a lot of our social engineering activities. But yeah, he can talk about the history of social engineering.
Yeah, we can bring Truman on. We should hit up Kevin and see if he's down to talk with us one time.
Kevin
You
Mitnick.
can,
Well, he works
yeah,
for a competitor. He actually owns a competing company. So
it's all good.
I'll plug
Still
it.
talk
It's
InfoSec.
called KnowBe4. But yeah. So he's still around, still doing what he does. I think for a long time he couldn't touch a computer, which made it hard for him to defend himself in court.
That's
So,
crazy.
but yeah, pretty cool. And let's see. So we covered Kevin Mitnick. We covered Steve Wozniak, John Draper, Joy Bubbles. I think that's it for this little segment, for me at least. So, but yeah, just to give you a little quick tidbit on computer security history. Some of the things I want to talk about though in the future is definitely Kevin Poulsen, which you kind of mentioned earlier. We'd like to talk about the Pentagon Hackers, which was in the 90s. That was pretty interesting. A site that I used to be a member of, Anti-Online, covered that one pretty well. That was pretty cool just to see that live in action. I'd like to cover some of the groups that are out there. Anonymous has a pretty interesting backstory. It's been a few years now since they were really in kind of the spotlight. I don't know that they hold as much clout as they used to, but definitely worth.
Yeah, what happened to
covering.
them? I haven't heard about them in a while. I wonder if
Yeah.
they're like conjuring up some master scheme right now.
Well, a lot, there was no real organization to them, right? No real leader, but there was a few guys who were kind of the alphas in the group, I guess, even though they had no leadership. But what happened, at least from my knowledge, was that one of them, so they all split up into different factions anonymous, like lolsec and anti-sec and all that stuff. And one of them got busted. I can't remember his real name, but I know his handle was Sabu. And Sabu got busted and then converted into an informant. And basically he kind of outed the other people in the group. And then once those guys were kind of taken down, we didn't hear a whole lot of stuff coming from Anonymous after that. But I think they're still around. I think people still try to kind of work under that guise. But for having no leadership, they were pretty organized in some of their efforts, and the marketing was on point. Like all the graphics that they did and the videos that they put together was pretty amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, that was kind of around the time when I got really into computer security, and so that stuff's a lot of fun to talk about. The HB Gary Federal hack, definitely want to go over that. The Fin7 Group, Carbon hack, some interesting stuff there, right? They've made over $1 billion doing a bunch of different things, but one of the coolest things they did, and I hate to say coolest because it resulted in theft of millions of dollars, but they coordinated across I think it was 28 different countries, an ATM heist where they had money mules basically waiting by the ATMs, and then they, through hacked systems, were basically spitting out money from the ATMs, and then all these people around the world were grabbing the cash.
No way.
Yeah, and I think it was like I want to say it was like 15,000 ish ATM transactions across 28 different countries.
What was the total loss there? Do you know? Like how much money was kicked out?
There's different estimates, but I think I don't know what through the ATM heist exactly. I'd have to look it up, but I know through just overall that group has a reputation of almost $1 billion or over $1 billion earned from their criminal activities. So pretty crazy. And their connection to the Lazarus Group, which is a North Korean APT, Advanced Persistent Threat, and it's kind of funny because there's a lot of different groups that kind of have either related to Lazarus Group or use Lazarus Group's tools. So that's pretty interesting. So, but definitely talk about that. Talk about the Sony hack. I would love to cover that. So hopefully we'll have a nice little series of history podcasts to kind of go along with our weekly, daily, or not weekly, daily, but weekly news podcast. So.
Yeah, I think that'd be fun. I love talking about these hack stories. They're all like movie scripts.
Yeah.
In a way, but they're real, and it makes it like, whoa, these guys are badass,
Yeah, I mean, it's badass. It's good to know the history, right? I mean, I'm always whenever I teach anybody anything, I'm like, yeah, it's cool that we have calculators to do the math, but like at the same time, you need to know how to do the math on paper first.
Yeah,
to understand how the calculator's working, so that when the math when you get the answer, like why you got the answer. And the same goes with like history and computer security and stuff like that. Like there's reasons why a strong password is 8 characters long, right? And it's not just because we came up with 8 characters arbitrarily. It's because there's actual reasons in Windows why anything less than 8 characters is not great. And, those are the kind of things that, like, especially, I mean, just me being an adjunct professor at one point and teaching undergrads about computer security, like I shouldn't say I knew, I was really surprised at how much information they weren't being taught and how much I was trying to catch them up in an advanced pen testing class. I was having to teach like fundamentals, but also teach them pen testing. It was kind of difficult. So hopefully some people get some benefits out of this series, at least.
Yeah, totally.
That's
I mean, I'd love to learn more about that too. 100%. It's always good to have like more, underground knowledge that it's just really not out there. It's not on the surface. Like what you said, like who's going to really go and search why does, minimum password need to be 8, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I'm down to go over that, down to go over the hacker details, hacker stories. They're always fun.
Yeah, we'll go over the Hacker Manifesto.
We'll start
still around, but I don't know how many people follow it. So,
let's cover it.
I got tons of books, tons of half researched knowledge in my brain that I can give out, and it should be a lot of fun. So,
what was that movie again? I'm gonna go put on my watch list.
Which one?
The one I think you said Sneakers.
Yeah, Sneakers is one of my top favorites for sure. So
okay,
definitely in my top 10.
Sneakers it is.
Yeah, Sneakers movie is night. So the first scene in that movie, they rob a bank, and honestly, like watching that, I don't even know how old I was, but I was like, wow, you can get paid to do that? That's amazing. And then I became a pen tester. So, and thanks to Tevora, I got to rob a bank. So
Oh dang, we gotta save that story.
yeah,
That story.
so we can tell that story, but we have to have Kevin Dick on the line for that. So Kevin
Okay,
Dick's leads
Then
up our
say
threat
it, say
team,
it.
and he was involved in that one. So that was a lot of fun. So.
Okay, yeah. Note that we'll reach out to Kevin. We'll get him on the line. That'll be
Yeah.
a fun thing to go into
Oh
detail.
yeah, I got tons of stories like that. I mean, I could talk about sneaking into places with pizza. So
Why is it always pizza for the win?
well, me and pizza, so
Yeah, we know you love pizza.
but I don't know. I just think people like associate pizza with
It's like
just
a
being
comfort food,
innocent,
so
right?
no one
like if you're
thinks
carrying
nice
around
about
a pizza, like you're not really up to no good. I
yeah,
don't know.
it's all good. Like even if you are and you have a pizza, it's like all right, he still brought pizza, so it's cool.
Yeah, it's like that whole. I don't know if it's a saying, but like people say, like, never question the guy with the clipboard, right? Like if you see a guy walking around with a clipboard, like he must be doing something he's supposed to be doing, right? Like he's probably checking
Yeah.
out the heater or air conditioner or something. Same thing with the pizza.
Or he's auditing us, so we don't want to talk to him anyway.
Exactly. So, but yeah, that was a fun one. That was, well, we'll talk about it another time, but one of the most exhilarating projects I've ever worked on. So,
Okay, I'm down. Save it for maybe we can get Kevin on here for next week, and we'll talk to him about it. That'd be really fun.
that'd be awesome. Yeah, we'll have to reach out to him.
Sounds good, man. Any final stories you want to say for this session of Tevora Talks?
No, that pretty much covers it. Yeah, I think I covered what I wanted to cover, and I probably could have done a more in-depth job. So I'll just say sorry in advance. But hopefully, it sparked something in you that you're going to go out and do a little bit more research and find out more information than I could provide. But
Yeah, go down the rabbit hole. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed these topics. We're gonna keep bringing them to you more and more. And hey, man, that was a fun conversation. I enjoyed it. I'm gonna start researching more of it now because yeah, you don't think about it, right? But these hack stories are actually pretty interesting. So
yeah, definitely. I mean, I think some of these guys, especially Kevin Mitnick, changed kind of how we did things today. And Joy Bubbles was actually one of the first, I would say, network security engineers ever to be hired, right? Because he actually got hired by AT&T to help secure their system. I think it was AT&T. I could be wrong on that, but he got hired by the phone company. So yeah, so he was the start of our entire field.
that's really cool, man.
So.
Well,
yeah.
thanks to those pioneers that paved the way and gave us jobs today.
Yeah.
So shout out to them.
Damn, it feels good to be a gangster.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for all those guys. And Woz, if you're listening to this, we're going to have to reschedule you for next week. But definitely stay on the line because we were looking forward to having you on the show.
Yeah, Kevin has a very tight schedule, so we have to give priority to him.
Yeah.
And then we'll squeeze you in, though, Woz.
And if you are listening to this, I would love to interview you. At the very least, shake your hand. Even in COVID-19, I'd risk it.
I still wear a glove, though.
Nah.
No. All right.
Anyways, all right, man. I'll talk to you. Thanks a lot.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening in. Make sure to subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. Follow us on our podcasts. If you have any cool stories you want us to cover, if you would like to be a guest, or as Matt always says, if you have any rude remarks, send them to podcast@tevoratalks.com. And with that said, we're wrapping up the week. Have a great week to come, and we'll see you guys on the next episode. Tevora out.